Pete and Emily lived a quiet life in their small home at the edge of town. Pete, ever the pragmatist, didn't believe in supernatural nonsense, and Emily, a skeptic herself, often teased him for his rational outlook. But their simple, happy life began to unravel one dark autumn week, a week that would end in horror neither of them could have imagined. It started on an ordinary Monday. Pete worked late and drove home on the quiet, tree-lined road leading to their neighbourhood. As his car rolled toward the turn onto their street, something caught his eye. Under a flickering street lamp, a woman stood motionless at the edge of the woods. Pete slowed his car, squinting to make out her features. She was tall and gaunt, her dark, tattered dress clinging to her unnaturally thin frame. Long, matted hair fell around her face, obscuring her features. Something about her sent a chill racing down his spine. As the car approached, she tilted her head sharply in his direction. The movement startled him, and he instinctively pressed the gas. By the time he reached the safety of his driveway, the woman was gone. When Pete walked inside, Emily greeted him cheerfully, but he barely responded. "Emily, you okay?" she asked, noticing the tension in his expression. "Pete, yeah, just thought I saw something weird on the way home." He didn't elaborate, but the image of the woman lingered in his mind all night. 2 nights later, Pete stayed late at work again. He'd almost convinced himself the woman was a trick of his tired eyes, but as he turned onto their street, his heart sank. There she was, standing in the same spot as before, but this time she was closer to the road. Pete slowed to a crawl, his pulse quickening. Her head tilted again in that sharp, unnatural way, and he swore he saw her lips curl into a faint, twisted smile. She didn't move as he passed. This time he couldn't help but look in the rearview mirror. She was still there, her hollow eyes boring into his, her figure shrinking into the darkness as he drove away. When he got home, Emily was waiting in the kitchen. "Emily, you're late," she said with a smile, but her face fell when she saw his pale expression. "Pete, there's a woman at the end of the road. I've seen her twice now. It's strange. She doesn't move, she just stares." Emily frowned. "Emily, you think she needs help? Maybe she's lost." "Pete, no, there's something wrong with her. She doesn't look. She's not normal." Emily tried to reassure him, but that night Pete barely slept. By Thursday, the tension in the house was palpable. Pete was jumpy, his eyes constantly darting toward the windows. Emily tried to comfort him, but even she began to feel uneasy as strange things started happening around the house. The television flickered on and off by itself. Objects, keys, a coffee mug, Pete's watch, disappeared and reappeared in odd places. Once, while brushing her teeth, Emily heard a faint whisper in her ear. Pete, that night, as they sat in the living room, Emily noticed Pete had gone quiet, his gaze fixed on the window. "What's wrong?" she asked, following his line of sight. There, just outside the glass, stood the woman. Her face was inches from the pane, her empty eyes gleaming in the dim light, her mouth stretched into a grotesque grin, revealing teeth that were jagged and yellowed. Emily screamed and scrambled backward, but when she looked again, the woman was gone. "She's here," Pete said, his voice trembling. Emily grabbed her phone to call the police, but Pete stopped her. "What are you going to say? That a creepy woman looked through our window? They'll think we're crazy." Instead, they double-checked every lock in the house and huddled together in the bedroom. The next night, Emily woke to the sound of creaking floorboards. She glanced at Pete, who was fast asleep beside her, and strained her ears. The sound grew louder, closer, until it stopped just outside their bedroom door. "Pete," she whispered, shaking him awake. Before he could respond, the door creaked open. Standing in the doorway was the woman. She was fully visible now, her body bent at unnatural angles. Her bony hands clutched the doorframe, and her grin widened as she stepped inside. Emily screamed, but Pete sprang out of bed and switched on the light. The woman was gone. They didn't sleep that night. Instead, they sat in the living room with every light in the house turned on. Emily clutched a kitchen knife while Pete kept glancing at the shadows, his face pale and drawn. "She's not just watching us anymore. She's inside the house." On Saturday night, Pete insisted on sleeping with the light on, but Emily protested. "We can't live like this. Maybe we should leave. Stay with my parents for a while." Pete agreed, but before they could make plans, exhaustion overtook them. Emily woke in the middle of the night to an icy chill. She turned over, expecting to see Pete, but his side of the bed was empty. "Pete!" she whispered. Then she saw him. He was lying on the floor, his eyes wide with terror. The shadow woman was crouched over him, her head twisted toward Emily, her grin impossibly wide. Emily tried to scream, but no sound came out. She watched in horror as the woman's long, spindly fingers reached for Pete, pulling him into the darkness beneath the bed. The lights flickered and went out. Emily woke the next morning in bed, drenched in sweat. She turned to shake Pete awake, but he wasn't there. His side of the bed was cold, the sheets undisturbed. "Pete!" she called, her voice trembling. She searched the house, but he was nowhere to be found. His phone was on the nightstand, his car still in the driveway, but Pete was gone. When she entered the bedroom again, her heart stopped. Carved into the floorboards where Pete had been pulled under was a symbol, an intricate spiralling design that seemed to shimmer faintly. The whispering began that night. Emily... She was never alone again.